Hey, what's up, everybody? This is the Nowhere to Go But Up podcast, and I'm your host, Sean Dustin. Another Monday. Happy Monday to everybody out there. I hope you had a great weekend. All you mothers out there, happy Mother's Day. If somebody didn't tell you that, you're going to hear it from me. I appreciate you and all of your efforts and everything you do out there for your families. I have a very special guest today. His name is Peter Panagore, and he has a very interesting story. It has to do with life after death and near-death experiences, which are very, very fascinating to me, and I can't wait to listen to his story and ask him some questions about what he went through. But first, this episode of the podcast is brought to you by Get Past Your Shit, the book. It's 19 stories of imperfect people who prove you can, by my friend Kelly McCausey. All of that information and direct links to her book, as well as anything about her, are available in the description, as well as everything that we talk about and all of the links to Peter and his documentary and everything about him and myself will also be available in the show notes as well. If you're on YouTube, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button and thumbs this video up. If you're watching on Facebook, do me a favor, like and share. And anywhere else, just, go ahead and subscribe. That would definitely help me out. I look forward to connecting with you. And if you guys have any suggestions of things that I could be doing better or things that I'm doing that are annoying the hell out of you, do me a favor and just email the show at nowheretogobutupnow@gmail.com. I look forward to hearing from you and your requests or your irritations, with how I do my show. I'm always there to listen, right? So anyways, after these messages, we will be right back with Peter.
Sean Dustin spent time in federal and state prison for drug trafficking and fraud. Upon release in 2006, he had nothing but the clothes on his back, a bag of mail, and legal paperwork. In 2010, he kicked a long-time methamphetamine habit and started the long climb back up the ladder of life. This is the Nowhere to Go But Up podcast. If you want transparency and authenticity, you're in the right place. This is the Nowhere to Go But Up podcast, and this is Sean Dustin.
All right, welcome back. What's going on, Peter?
Hey, Sean. I loved your intro. Awesome.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Hopefully it was a lot better than that stuttering I did in the beginning. Jesus, I'm not very good when it comes to that intro part with the all the announcements and stuff.
I thought you did fabulous.
Oh, well, thanks, and I appreciate it.
Honestly, truly. I was like, I wasn't jaw dropped, but I was mouth open. I was like,
well, hey, I appreciate you coming on the show and being willing to share your story with us today, with myself and the listeners out there. Let me get this. No, I'll leave that on there on the bottom.
yeah.
So tell me a little bit about yourself and this amazing story of yours. I think that I got it wrong when I said you froze to death, and that was in the title of this broadcast. So definitely we're going to get to the bottom of that. Sorry for the mistake. Let's get it right.
All right. So I froze to death. I did. That's what happened to me, for real.
Okay.
So you were right, Sean. Just want to point that out. You were right.
Okay.
And so I was 21 years old. I just turned 21. I was an exchange student from UMass Amherst to Montana State University in Bozeman. I didn't want to go back to Boston for spring break. I was a mountaineer, an adventurer, backpacker, National Ski Patrol, Boy Scout my whole life, all that kind of stuff. Outdoors. I was an outdoors guy. And I found a climbing partner at the outdoor club at Montana State University, a guy I did not know. And we got to know each other a couple of weeks ahead of time. He had a trip planned, 10 days in the backcountry in March with 10 feet of snow, about a day's drive from the Arctic Circle and north of Banff in Alberta. And we spent the first few days in British Columbia, snow caving up to a mountain, skiing in for 8 days or so and having an incredible time.
Wow.
Came back out. Oh, it was awesome. Living in snow caves, came across an avalanche area, just silence. One time I had to wax one of my skis once, and I had to get off my ski to do this. I had like a 70-pound pack on. I fell in the snow up to my neck, and it was like 10 feet deep. I had to swim out of the snow. It was never dangerous, but it was really funny.
How hard is that? Because I did an Outward Bound and I had to wear a 70-pound pack, and this was in Joshua Tree.
Oh, nice.
down in Southern California, and this was when I was younger, way younger, and that was hard. So I can't imagine what being on skis and carrying a 70-pound pack would be like.
Slow going, but I had backcountry skis on. I
Okay.
wasn't, I was geared up, and the skis were excellent. I still have them, and they're in the barn. They're still hanging in the barn, and they're really great skis. A Pokey 900s. So anyway, that's not really the story that I'm trying to tell. It's
Okay.
I after the snow cave event, we went to a world famous ice climb called Lower Weeping Wall on a place called Cirrus Mountain. It's a 10,000-foot mountain, but we only went up 500 or 600 feet. But it's not far off of the Ice Fields Parkway. It's within 50 to 70 yards. You walk into it, you park across the street, you grab your gear, you walk into it. We got there. There was 10 feet of snow on the ground and a bunch of teams on the ice. They're all climbing up, maybe a dozen. We're the last team that shows up. And I'd never ice climbed before. I'd mountain climbed and rock climbed, and I'd use ropes and carabiners and knots and all this kind of stuff, but I never ice climbed. And I couldn't come up with 2 axes. I could only come up with 1 axe and a hammer. And the hammer is about this big, and the axe is about that long. Can't even see it on camera how big it is. And when you place an axe in the ice, you put the bit in and you tip the pick in, and it's long. And so it has a nylon, the one I used had a nylon tube that I could suspend myself from it. I could click this thing in and slide this bead down on the tube, and I could let go, and I could just hang on the mountain like this. Physics. It's just physics. So it's a hypotenuse.
Did you have any ropes on or anything?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
It sounds like you're just hanging there.
Well, but my hammer, which was much shorter because I couldn't come up with 2 axes, I could never hang on because it was short as a 6 or 8 inch hammer. So I could lock it into the ice and I could use it to climb with, but its strap was attached to the bottom, the butt end of the hammer, and so I could never dangle on it because it just pull out. So I had to expend all this energy of my forearms much more rapidly. I never got to rest. I always had to grip. And so what that meant and we agreed to this ahead of time. And Tim was a lead climber, certified lead climber. I'd been climbing a lot. I've been on the ski patrol since I was a sophomore in high school. So I'm like serious winter guy. But I was also bravado and decided to talk, I could talk Tim into that. I could climb this with this hammer. And I did. The only problem is that I burned out so fast that by the time we reached the top of the climb, 500 or 600 feet up, the sun was setting because we had to move so slowly, and the temperature dropped about 30 degrees, and all the other teams that were on the ice with us that day, the last team was walking out. They weren't even on the ice anymore. They were leaving. And so we're at the top of this climb, 500-600 feet up, and the sun goes down, temperature drops about 30 degrees like that. And the moon doesn't rise. There's a million zillion stars in the sky of every single color. So we could see. We weren't blind, but there was no sun, of course, and there was no moon. And we knew we were in serious trouble immediately because hypothermia started to set in. Immediately, we started shivering, violently shivering, and jaws were clattering. And Tim hauled up the rope. It was a double rope, 150-foot rope. He hauled this rope up, and it became a 300-foot knot. And because we went up too fast and didn't lay the line right, and so now the rope is a knot, and in order to get it untangled, I have to take my gloves off because I have to see with my fingers, I have to feel the rope, to untie so I started getting frostbite. So now I got permanent frostbite. I still have all my digits. I'm thanking God for that. But I'm always hits 50 degrees. It can hit 56 degrees in a wind or 60 in a wind. I have to have gloves on. Everything, nose, cheeks, chin, feet, toes. Anyway, so
wow.
Yeah. So I never forget. I mean, I can't forget the experience of dying, but I never can forget the physical aspects of it. They're always present to me. So the sun goes down. I untangle this rope. We got rope. We have frostbite beginning. We have hypothermia, clattering jaw. We're in serious trouble. And we don't have any more food. And we don't have a sleeping bag because it's a day climb. And we're soaked to the skin because it's sweaty. And we don't have super high-tech gear because that just had been invented. So we were in deep trouble. And we talked about snuggling up to the ice for the night. But we decided if we were going to die, we were going to die if we snuggled up. There was no way we were going to live through the night because it was too cold. And so, and I should mention that I'd been as ski patrol that particular winter. There was a day that winter when it was 50 below zero on the mountain. And all day long, we were treating people for hypothermia and frostbite. And so it was like right in my face. I was tuned up on it. And so I'm gonna cut across to the dying part. Many more terrible things happened to us that night.
I can imagine. I mean, you were completely unprepared. This was just like by accident. It wasn't even supposed to go down this way. So I mean, you were literally, you had nothing.
We got nothing. I didn't even have a Bic lighter on me. Not even if I had a Bic lighter, it wouldn't have made any difference because there's no wood.
Yeah.
We're on the side of an ice cliff. So it was terrifying. I was terrified. But one of the reasons why I liked working with Tim, trusting him, with my life for this whole trip, this kind of trip, you trust the person you're with your life every day. And I trusted him because we did some hikes and skis and climbs and stuff together ahead of time. And I could see that he was like me, that he would keep a level head under desperate situation. Because you can't have somebody freaking out when things go wrong, because that just makes it worse. Then you are going to die. So Tim was completely level headed. We were scared. We were both frightened. So we roped up to each other. It's still this dark, twilight, starlight, and Tim's leading. We have ice. We have crampons on. We have ice axes. We have to traverse across the face, drop down to the side 500 feet, and in the dark, and to the first rappel. We get to the first rappel, and we descend the first rappel, but we made a mistake on that too, because cognitively we started losing our capacity for thinking because our brains are freezing. And so we, instead of treating this rappel correctly and using a piece of nylon webbing to put around the tree and put the rope through the nylon webbing, we decided that we would put the rope around the rough barked little tree, whatever it was, spruce or pine or whatever. The problem is the rope is wet and the tree is not. The tree's frozen, so the rope froze to the tree. So we descend down this, and at the very end of it, there's this overhead. So it's mostly like this, but then we get to the bottom, and there's this, 40 feet of just free fall, of free space where you're rappelling. And we get down to the bottom of that, and then now the rope is frozen to the tree. So we're on this ledge. It must be maybe 10 by 10 or something, 15 by 15. And the rope is frozen above. We can't do anything about it. And now we're losing our coordination. It's difficult to speak. Our lips are freezing, so we can't form words. We're falling over each other. It was really bad. And there's more in the book. There's much more in the book. And I'll just toss out, it is an Audible international bestseller. So, I tried to write it in such a way that it's a well-written book. Okay. So we get out of that fix. Tim decides to ascend back up the rope. And so he has these knots called Persic hitches, and he climbs up a little. I can spare you that detail too. Suffice it to say that he went up the rope part way and the rope came free. He was risking his life. He was climbing free up the rope, 100, 150 feet, in order to free the rope. That's what he was doing. But he got up maybe 30 feet, maybe 20 feet. I don't really know. It could have been 40. I'm not sure. I wasn't looking. I had the rope wrapped around me. All I know is he'd gone up some distance, and suddenly he screams falling, and I roll out of the way, and he falls on half on me and half on the 4 or 5 feet of snow that's still up there on that ledge. So we go off to the next rappel. Now I don't know how many hours have gone by. Hours and hours and hours have gone by.
And it's still dark, right?
Well, the moon. Oh, good.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. The moon had come up. So there was like a 3/4 moon. So it was better. All right. It was definitely, we could see better. And I should tell you that the warden, so the night before, I'll throw that in. So the night before, we spent the night at the warden's cabin, just, 10 miles up the road. And we signed into the wilderness log like you're supposed to. We didn't sign out of the wilderness log like you're supposed to. So he came looking for us in the middle of the night. And we were on this ledge. And he pulled into the parking lot. And we jumped up and down, and he flashed his lights, and we knew that he was there. And so we were like, somebody knows we're alive.
Mhm,
Somebody
mhm.
knows we're here. So we can, but he can't climb up. This is such a sparsely populated area. I think at the time it was 1.7 people per square mile. It's like nobody, and that's
Yeah.
over the whole. That includes everybody who lives in Banff, and most people do. So we were heartened anyway, and we traversed over to the next rappel. And this rappel we were off the ice on the rock with an iron pin and a ring, and we put the rope through that, and so we descend down the rock, and Tim goes first, and it's shadowy, and it's a corner. So he goes down this shadowy thing, and he goes around this corner. He gets on this ledge. I follow him down. I pull the rope through. We clip in the mountain in front of us. There are iron pins and rings and carabiners and harnesses. And now we're strapped to the mountain for the first time. So for the first time all night, we're not going to fall. And so we're totally safe. And I tie off one end of the rope to my harness. I throw the other end of the rope out. The warden flashes his lights and drives away because we only have one rappel to go, and it's late. These guys are going to be fine. So I pull on the rope gets stuck on the first pull. And now our situation went from being heartened to knowing we're going to die there, because I couldn't get the rope out, and I couldn't snap the rope free because it was around the corner. So the snap ended at the corner every time. You know how that goes.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't yank it free. It must have wedged into a V, like on the first pull somewhere. And I didn't pull much slack through with it. And so the night progressed, pulling on the rope, getting hypothermia advancing, looking at the moon move, looking at the stars move, getting colder and colder, hypothermia advancing. And it got to the place where hours went by, and I unzipped my coat, even though I know better. I felt like all of the blood was rushing to my core, and I got sweaty. That's what it felt like, and I got really hot. I know that's not what happened, but that's what it felt like. And I remember thinking, it's okay if I lose 5 fingers or a hand or an arm. At least my heart will survive. But I'm really hot. And so I unzipped myself, which of course speeds along the whole process. And I remember having as I began to fall asleep, I would fall asleep, crash, climb back up again, pull on the rope. And I remember at this one point I was standing there, and I thought to myself, all right, you're falling asleep. This is over. And there's only one stage left before death. And you can't fix what's going wrong. And so I remembered, instead of being frightened anymore, I was suddenly just accepting. I was accepting my mortality. And I started thinking about God. And I started thinking about my family. And I was sorrowful that my parents were going to lose another child. My sister had run away, vanished when I was a kid, and broke my mom's heart in a big way. And my dad and the rest of us too, me too. And I thought, well, there's nothing, I can't not take this kid. It's going to be terrible for them. And then I fell asleep, and then I stood up again, and then I had lost my peripheral vision. And my peripheral vision went all black, like a big black circle. And that big black circle just faded to black really rapidly into tunnel vision. And I remember looking around thinking, wow, I'd never seen such a thing in my life. I didn't understand what was going on. And I mean, I knew intellectually, oh yeah, one more stage, but to see it was an entirely different thing. And it closed down to black. And when it went black, I expected to fall asleep. I expected to be unconscious is really what I thought. I'll be I'll be unconscious. But I wasn't unconscious. It went and I was utterly awake. And I thought, why am I still awake?
Mm-mm.
I don't remember falling to the rock. Why have I not collapsed? And then I knew my eyes were shut. And I knew intellectually that I must have collapsed, but I didn't feel that. But in front of me, where the mountain felt like it should have been, it suddenly opened up into darkness. So I knew I had my eyes shut, and yet I could see darkness. Not like a room where you are when you pull the shades and everything is black, dark out shades. It was darkness in which I could see, and I could see into an infinity. I could just see into infinity, and far, far in this infinity. Maybe, and this is everything I say is metaphor from here on out, and simile and symbol and all the rest of that kind of stuff. And way far in the distance, as far away as the Big Bang is from us, was a pinprick of light. And that pinprick of light rushed toward me at faster than the speed of light, covering a vast distance, and communicated to me intelligence, power, and the intent to take me. And it rushed toward me, and it got bigger, and it filled my vision. It filled everything I could see, swallowing up the darkness. And as it rushed toward me, it communicated to me directly, telepathically, no language, I'm taking you. And I was like, no way, you're not taking me. I don't understand what's going on, but you're not going anywhere. And so I took all my willpower, and I've been surviving all night, like tapping into my reptilian mind of just survival. We had stopped talking. I mean, we could hardly talk, but we had decided that any wasted motion, any wasted energy was depleting our batteries, and we were going to, hasten our death. And so we were being very willful about our survival. And I took all of my will and I put it up as a shield, and it mattered not at all. It just reached right through my shield and took me right out of my body. Whew, and I was out. And up to the moment of being captured, I was strongly resistant. But once I was captured, I knew that I was in the presence of a super intelligence, of a super powerful, over which I had no agency at all. I had no power whatsoever. And I was immediately content. I was inside of this entity, this intelligence, and I was being carried, swept, lifted into through this tunnel. But the tunnel wasn't like a narrow thing; it was a narrow thing and a wide thing at the same time. It was the same infinity that somehow also had this like tunnel through the middle of it. I don't understand how the paradox works, but I was content, and I just rode inside this as this entity spoke to me of comfort and wellness, but not in language. And the next thing I knew, I traveled this incredible distance in an instant. And in the next thing I knew, I was this entity either expanded into all of a greater nothingness, an illuminated nothingness, or I popped into another nothingness. It seems like I popped into this other dimension, this other realm, this other reality. Only this reality, there was nothing. There was no thing, nothing. Everything in the universe, everything we have, my glasses are like molecules and quarks and muons and all the rest of the stuff that you dig down into. But there was none of that. There was nothing at all. I was nothing, and I could see into not all the way into infinity, because that's an exaggeration. But because infinity is too far away, but I could see further than I'd ever seen before in this illuminated darkness and this paradoxical place. And I knew I could see myself. I could see myself as very large, the size 10,000 times bigger, the size of, I don't know what, an asteroid. I was huge. And I had no materialism. There was nothing material about me. I was entirely, for metaphor, energy. And my energy was myself, my consciousness, my awareness, my thinking capacity, my knowledge, my sensory. But I had no fingers and I had no eyeballs, but I could see in every direction simultaneously. And there was no thinking in the way, no brain in the way of my thinking. And I realized in an instant, this is me. This is the real me. How did I forget myself? This is who I am. And I was utterly unafraid. I was content. I was home. I was self again. And then, and I tell this, like I said, in a chronology, but I'm in timelessness. And it's not just an eternal now, it's all time heading in every direction, in every universe, all at once, all in one place. And it's, so it's always this eternal place, but all time is there. And so this, a portal opened in front of me. The light appeared, a gate with a pearly gates, uh, whatever you want to call it. There was like an opening, a rending open in the darkness, and that darkness was light, and that light had flow to it. It was a flowing light, and it was transparent. I could see another tunnel through its core. It was translucent. I could see this thickness of it, and the inside of the thickness of it, and I could see the top of it. And it was all this flowing beauty, just beauty. And I was, I don't want to say compelled, because that's not quite the, I was attracted. I wanted to touch this with all of my being. And so I reached with it with my consciousness, and when I touched it, it was alive. And it was alive with a capital A. It was all life, everywhere, in everything, the entire universe, all life, and it flowed into me. I went into it, and it flowed into me, and it surrounded me, and it filled this nothingness I was in. And then all these things happened at once. I heard my soul name called, the, not Peter, but the origin, the creation of the very being of myself. And I could see myself as if I were a photon, in a superposition. I was a wave and a particle. I was both part of these 10 zillion other photons that made up the totality of the oneness of being. I was exactly like another photon, but I was a separate photon. And I was a created creature made by this entity of light. And I was light from light. And my name was the calling of my soul into being. And it was eons old, eons and eons old. And I could see the eons of length of my life, the width and the breadth and the depth of my soul life. And I could see these other sort of slices into my soul life that were other lives I had lived or was living, because I was in timelessness. And even when I was there, I couldn't tell. I could see into these other universes, my lives, of the lives I was living, but that knowledge was taken from me when I came back. Now all I know is that I had lived these lives, and there were many of them, but not one of them was me. The only me there was the created self made by creator, the soul essence of me. All these other parts of me, they weren't the totality of me. They were very much less than me. And I went through, I knew that I was known. And my Peter, the part of me that was Peter, made an appearance. And that part of me that was Peter was known by the knower. So not only was I simultaneously shown the origin of myself and these other lives, I also was shown the totality of my entire lived life as Peter up to that point, and my life review. But my life review, and most NDEers, but not everybody, most NDEers, many NDEers go through a life review. And you want me to keep going, Sean? I don't want to.
Yeah, no, I'm just,
Okay, all right.
I'm fascinated by what you're saying. And for those that don't know what an NDEer is that that's a near death experience, person that's experienced near death. Yeah, that's what it is.
Yep, and thank you. And so a lot of NDEers, near-death experiencers, have life reviews, and mine was, I went through all of the pain that I gave away in my life from the point of view of the person I gave it to. So all the karma that all the sin, all the pain that I gave to anybody attached to me. It didn't attach to them. I felt it from their point of view. All the nasty things I did to my sisters, because, I was only 21 years old. Most of my life was with my sisters. All the things I did to my sisters, and I thought it was a little tiny hurt to them. It turned out to be a humongous hurt to them, much larger than I had conceived of in my life. Didn't have any idea how large the pain was that I caused. And that pain had accrued to me. And so when I experienced my life review, I saw the pain I gave them from inside of their lives and felt the magnified pain that I gave them. and I experienced, juxtaposed to that, all of the suffering, all of the judgments I had made, deciding to cause them their pain, and I judged myself as guilty and shameful. And so I judged myself. But meanwhile, while this was going on and I was being shown this and experienced this in this very interior sort of way, I had two perspectives. I had three perspectives. I had the perspective of the person I hurt, the perspective of my judgments that caused the pain, and I could see this from outside myself. I could see this happening to me. And this voice with no sound was saying inside of me, this light was saying, I love you. I know you. I've always known you. There was nothing of you that's ever been hidden from me. I have known you. I have experienced your life with you. I love you as you are. I love you. I love you. I forgive you. I forgive you. I love you. I forgive you. And at the same time, I'm seeing all of humanity. I'm seeing all of humanity's inhumanity to humanity as not their fault, because we didn't make the universe. Creator made the universe, and we are in this universe. And although I was guilty for the willful actions of causing pain, I wasn't guilty for having made the matrix in the first place. And so I saw this great equality of all of the pain that human beings cause each other, not in comparison to my pain that I caused somebody, or Paul Potts' pain that he caused a whole bunch of people, but all humanity in comparison to purity. And in comparison to purity, the measurement was we are all nothing, and purity is all everything. And the love was so vast, it far outweighed all of the impurities of humanity, no matter who we were. And so I was utterly forgiven. And when I was forgiven, I took all of the love that I had taken with me in life. I also took with me to heaven, and all of the love I'd given away was mine too. And so with this love that was living inside me, and seeing the equality of humanity, and seeing the purity of the divine, and hearing the forgiving love and mercy of this voice speaking inside me, I turned to the divine light and was then infilled with it. I was infilled and expanded like a balloon, and I was filled with beauty, love, truth, knowledge, understanding, wholeness, healing, bliss, adoration, awe, knowledge. And I knew that I could know anything that I wanted to know, and I wanted to know all about the cosmos. I wanted to understand all about astronomy and physics and I wanted to know how the whole thing was put together. And in an instant, I knew. In an instant, I understood all of how it was all put together, to the capacity that my soul was able to understand infinity, which is not in totality. So even though I was in this state of union, of oneness of being, I was still less than infinity. But my unitive state of being was so filled with the divine light that Peter vanished. I was only in adoration. I was in this higher frequency buzz. And then that quieted down some. And I said to the voice, am I dead? And the voice said, yes, you're dead. And I said, but I don't think I'm done down there yet. My parents are suffering, and I'm taking another child from them. Now that I've seen this, maybe I can go back. And the voice took me, grabbed me by the scruff of the collar sort of thing, and flew me across the universe at the speed of thought to the very edge. And when I say this thing flew me across the universe, it is heaven. It's like there's no differentiation. This being is infinity, and I was in the middle of infinity, and it was personally present to me, and yet it was infinitely more than that. And so when it grabbed me by the scruff of the collar and dragged me through heaven, it was grabbing itself and dragging itself through itself to see itself. It's the totality of all there is. And so I was on the edge of heaven with this differentiation of not being the totality anymore, now somehow a separate piece. And I could see where heaven ended, where the realm of that dimensionality ended, in this higher physics, maybe say, I don't know. And looking down, I could see the earth like a hologram. I could see every 7 billion people on the earth as individuals, not like I'm looking at you, Sean, and then I'm looking over here at this and I'm looking at that. I was like, I could see everybody all at once. I had enough capacity, visuals and brain, or intellect, not brain, to see every action of every human being as I looked, doing everything they were doing. And I could see every single one was covered by a veil. And the veil I knew was symbolic. And the voice, which was the entire universe, the large, those all of heaven who spoke, said past, future, and present, and the eternal now said, in the way that I love you now, I have always loved you. This love is a 7 gazillion times greater than I can tell you, Sean. It was the totality of all the universe. The universe, it was all of heaven is love itself. And it always was, is, and always will be. And that's how much love I love you, me, this soul. I love you that much. And I love every single human being in the same way, with my infinite loving wholeness, healing, and holiness. And because of my love, you see now all is well, all has been well, and all will be well for you and for everyone. Because of my love, nothing is lost. So you can come home now. You don't need to go deal with your parents. In the wink of a human eye, your parents will be dead, and they'll be in this wholeness and healing. They'll be here before you know it. And I said, yeah, but I could see their faces, my parents in particular, and their suffering. I could see the length of their life without me in their faces. And I could see the length of their life with me in their faces. And one was less than the other. And so I said, so I'm traveling in a theater company, and I'm leaving on tour, and I made this promise, and I can't ditch the company. That's my other reason why I have to go back to life. And the voice ignored that. And I said, well, I haven't gone all the way into you yet. And the voice said, no, you haven't. I want you to, but you can choose. You get a choice. I said, well, if I go back to my life, can I come back here to this infinite love, this oneness of being, this unity that's incomprehensible here? And the voice said, yes. And I said, well, I choose to live my life. And the voice said, you won't live your life, and sent me back. And on the way back, I had to make a choice. I had 1 million entry points back into my life. I had 1 million choices to make. And in the center of the 1 million choices was the purity of the divine light itself. And then it faded as it went out to all these other entry point choices. And I could see all the probabilities all at once. And I picked one, and I didn't pick the center light. I picked one where I could live sort of a creative life with some bohemianness in it. And I remember having that thought, and then in an instant, because I was studying poetry and I was in theater, and I wanted, and the next thing I knew, I was being crushed like a truck compactor, crushed down from a much larger size. And then I felt like I was being screwed into my body very painfully, twist by twist by twist. And my body, this thing was alien to me. And when I was inside this thing, I had forgotten pain. I had forgotten suffering. It wasn't like I forgot where I left my ticket yesterday. It never existed. Suffering never existed for me before. It was gone. And now it was there, and it was awful, and everything hurt. And I swam to consciousness over some period of time, and I came to consciousness. Well, I came to awareness when I realized my body was being shaken, and I heard all this noise. And eventually, I came to my senses enough that I could hear, and my body started to work, and I was able to stand. And my partner Tim was screaming at me, "You were dead!" Screaming, crying, blubbering, "You were dead. If you died, I died," because it was bad. Mm-hmm. And then I stood up, and after some period of time, I was completely disoriented. I can't explain to you how disoriented I was. It was like somebody. Here's an analogy. It was like I'm from the 6th century, and suddenly I get stuffed in a space suit and sent up to the Skylab. And nobody speaks my language. Nobody explains what's going on. I have no idea how I got here or what's going on. It was sort of like that. I was completely alien in my own body. I didn't understand how my body worked or my mind worked. And that lasted a very long time. That lasted a long, long time. We self-rescued. Okay, so back to the mountain. The rope came free on the first pull. We descended. The car was right across the street in the parking lot. So we went over and we got the tent, first aid, Boy Scout, can't heat up in the car, got to bring your body up to temperature. So we self-treated with hypothermia till hours after the sun came up, and an hour, maybe 2 hours. And then we got in the car and heated ourselves up in the car when we were warm enough to do that. And then at some point, the warden showed up and asked us if we were are you the boys who were on the mountain last night? Yes, sir. He said, well, I came down to see if I had to get the helicopter to get your bodies this morning. I'm like, oh, okay. So, and then so that's just the experience. The near-death experience does not end. Okay, that was the experience part. I live with this every day. Not just my physical stuff, but I never fully came back. I've spent my life reintegrating. They say, the studies show, it takes 7 years to get reintegrated. I spent 20 years more. It's been close to 40 years now. I'm still working on it. So I'm going to stop there, Sean. I've talked for 40 minutes or so, half an hour. So I'm going to stop and let you say what you want.
All right. Well, we have a comment from the people that are watching, and this is Leslie Levinson, and he says, hello, gentlemen. That's true life awakening, self-awareness, and deep spiritual connection. Do you think people need to see life or death to make a decision to live?
No, but it helps. A lot of people I know who've not had near-death experiences, but who have come close to their mortality, they get cancer, they're in a terrible car wreck, whatever it is, they definitely have a sense of their mortality and often want to live a very vibrant life as a result. But no, I mean, I've got lots of buddies who are adrenaline junkies. They like to live an exciting life. You can decide to live your life for your children, because your children give you that new life. Lots of reasons for that. You don't need a near-death experience to experience the divine, and you don't need one to want to live to your fullest. But it helps.
Yeah. So what would you say is the lasting effect from that? The biggest thing, the takeaway from that, and that you brought with you that helps you keep going on. I mean, I feel like you've been to the other side. You've seen something that nobody else has seen. You've experienced something that nobody else has experienced. Does that play into any of the decisions you make today?
Yeah, every day, every choice. It's like, yes, good question. Yeah, the lasting impact is that I have an entirely new perspective. It's not like I described it early on as being in a silent black and white film when I came back. That's what the world was like for me. And I'd been to Colorland, Technicolor Land, or now we've got goggles, three-dimensional goggle vision. That's where I was. And now I'm back in silent film land. And so my perspective is always from this other place. And so the first thing I guess I did the major choice I made is I didn't go into my lifelong career. I was an English major, but I was going to architecture graduate school to join the family firm. I'd been pushing a pencil my whole life, and I worked in construction to know the job from the inside out. But I was like, I can't do that now. So I went to divinity school, and I went to divinity school, shocking my family and everybody around me. Aren't you? We're going to build skyscrapers. What are you doing? Now I got to go this, and I couldn't. I kept it a secret, and so yeah, it informed big decisions. It informed small decisions. I have about an acre of land that I live on, and when I let it go to microhabitat, most of it. I've got 15 types of butterflies and 7 types of bees and dragonflies and fish. And I had a moose in my yard, and I got mink walking through, but my son's buddies who all went to the local high school is like, what's with your dad? Why doesn't he doesn't mow his yard? it's just all full of weeds. And I'm like, no, that's not a weed. That's a goldenrod. And that's a this. And so I created this sanctuary for myself so that I can nature bathe. And so I make lots of decisions, daily decisions, based on my eternal nature, not on my physical nature. Because I am utterly not this. I live in this thing. My consciousness inhabits this thing. And this is, I've spent my whole life, my whole career, my whole personal life in pursuit on a daily basis, practicing centering prayer, Kriya Yoga, Hatha Yoga, spiritual reading. I got ordained in a denomination in order to hide out in the church so that I could serve people with love, but also I could study and practice my prayer, and nobody would suspect that I was what I was doing on my interior world. So economic decisions, location decisions, social decisions, cultural decisions, interpersonal decisions, everything. There's nothing about it that I do that is not informed by it. And I'm not alone in that. Those of us who come back, there are 10 million of us in the United States, at least. Because of cardiac care. And we're all living like this to varying degrees. My experience was pretty far out there. I've come to learn in the past 5 years, since I've come out of the closet about this in a big way, that my experience is not unique, but rare. Mm. And for people like me in particular, who've been to the place of non-being and in the fullness of the darkness and filled with the oneness of being, our perspective is like, this ain't home. Mm-hmm. I'm passing through here. I'm going to have as much fun as I can and do as much good as I can for as many people as I can in the meanwhile, but I can't wait to go home.
Wow. So I believe that we're energy, our consciousness and everything is, we're energy beings, and that we all are connected in some way, shape, or form. Yep. That's just how I feel, just because of some of the things that I've been through in my life. I don't know. I mean, I almost OD'd a couple of times, but every time that happened, I was, so far out of my mind anyways, that I wouldn't have known what I was experiencing, whether it was the drugs or if it was an experience. And my question is knowing what you know, how, is there hope?
Hope for what?
For humanity.
Oh yeah, I think there is hope for humanity. I think for the first time in the history of the world, there might be hope for humanity. And why do I say that? Because for the first time in the history of the world, science is raising the dead by the tens of millions all over the world, creating mystics. And we're now in the process, we're in the stage where we're discovering, did everybody come back with the idea of love, or did they not? And so far, yeah. So far as I can tell, as I talk to all these NDErs, love is the dominant theme. It doesn't matter whether you're Zoroastrian or Muslim or atheist or, scientist or Christian. It doesn't matter, because on the other side, there's no religion. This continuance of life back in the fullness of being. And so for the first time in history, humanity has survived for, we'll say, 100,000 years since we started, teaming up together in tribes, we've survived through tribalism. That's what, my group and your group. And now we've filled the earth, and we're shoulder to shoulder, and, we're running out of land now because the seas are rising, and, all sorts of terrible things are we've created or they're happening. And so the good news is, as we are pushing into the smaller and smaller territory with potential natural disasters resulting from what's going on the planet, we have this other thing going on. And this other thing going on is that there are tens of millions of if you imagine fiber optic cables that all originate in one power source of energy. And that cable, I've got a little fiber optic node sticking in my heart. And my little light is shining here, and I look over there, and there's another one like me who was brought back from the dead. And then more than us, more than the near-death experiencers, there are people who have had mystical experiences of 10 dozen different kinds,
Mm-hmm.
and they're not able to talk about it because it's taboo. Society says, no, you can't talk about these things. And now, first time in the history of the world, all these NDEs are coming back. We're like, no, we're on a mission. We're all on a mission. Every one of us, we all have our individual mission that we're doing. And what we're doing collectively is raising the voice of love and the possibility for discussion that humanity really is one. And it's not just that we're born of the same DNA, and we know it's mixed, Denisovans and Neanderthal and whatever, you know, but that thing that unites us, this energy that unites us, that's a tangible thing to me. That is not something that's theoretical in my life. It is the life force energy that I perceive in every single person I meet. And it's either I see it with my hands and this radiance around them, or I see it with my eyes and the shimmer around them, or I sense it with my soul and the energy around them or inside them. There's all these different mechanisms of perception for me that are as real to me as, seeing the color brown, or, putting my finger in a fire and it burning me.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a lot of us walking around like that. And so my hope for humanity is that, maybe we can shatter the stories we tell ourselves about our separateness, and find inside ourselves. And here's how this works for me: is the deeper I go inside myself and my prayer practice and my meditation practice and my yoga practice, the larger my capacity becomes on the inside for the radiant divine to have a space inside me, because I'm killing my false self, my dualistic mind, my egoistic self. I slowly, breath after breath after breath, carve another bit of that away, creating this capacity, which gives me the ability to see the light inside myself. And now that I see the light inside myself, I see it in other people. You see it in other people when you look in their eyes. This isn't a special capacity to me. When you look in someone's eyes, if you look in the eyes of someone who dies, if you're ever in the presence of someone who dies, as they're dying, watch their eyes. You'll see the light go out. You'll see that happen. And you see the light in people's eyes all the time. The light, capital T, capital L, the light sees itself. The light in me sees the light in you. My life review wasn't because someone was up there, some angelic scribe was writing down, taking, peering down on the monitor, watching what I was doing, because the divine is in me, experiencing life with me.
Mm-hmm.
There's no separation, and that's true for everybody. And when you strip away enough of the false self, you get to see the light in everyone else. It doesn't matter, they can be your enemy, your real life enemy. And I've had real life enemies who tried to take me down in my life. I could still see the light in them. And no matter who they were or what they did, it didn't change that. And so even as they tried to ruin my career, I could still love them. Not for who they were as a person, but for the light inside them. And that's really the source of the biggest change inside of me, is that by aiming the interior eye of myself back at where I came from, I brought that here with me, in small degree in comparison. But the more I aim my heart at the divine oneness of being, the more that is present inside of me, the more the radiance lives in my life and creates serendipities.
Mm-hmm.
But more importantly, brings light to other people, that they might find it inside themselves. And maybe the hope for humanity is that for the first time in the history of the world, there's enough of us walking around like this, that maybe we can together find a way to see each other as human being instead of objectifying.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have hope. I do. I have hope. But my true hope, my real hope, isn't in here. It's not in this life. My true hope, my strength comes from the fact that I know that I'm going to die, and and there is no death. and that death is just a continuation of my life. I've already experienced it twice. It's a continuation of my life, and so I'm fearless about it. And my I do have hope for humanity, but mostly I have hope for the souls of humanity.
Mhm, mhm. Oh, that was a great way to explain it. One question, we have another question from Leslie, but I'm going to ask something. So you said something about karma, and all of your karma came at you, and you felt what you had put onto other people, or the experiences of ego that was projected onto others. You felt that back in fold, what
Yeah.
that was like. Now when you came back out, and you said, you specifically mentioned your sisters. Now, did you, when you came back, and in this new perspective, did you did you go and make amends with them, and like what was that relationship like afterwards?
Well, I have two sisters, and one of them was still gone,
Hmm.
so there was no making amends there.
Hmm.
Eventually, the long story, things further down the road, yes, to a certain extent. But I kept this a secret. I didn't come back and tell people what happened to me,
Okay.
and I kept that a secret for 20 years because I knew how crazy it would sound, and so because I was well enough read, to know that, and lived enough life to know that, you don't go around saying this kind of shit to people.
Yeah.
So what I did instead, and I got this from my parents a couple years ago. I asked my parents. I said, "So remember that summer I came back, and now that you know about this, did you notice anything different about me?" And my dad says, "Yeah, well, your mother and I were talking, and yeah, we did. We talked about it. We remarked that you were kind, you were considerate." You were compassionate in ways, not that you weren't before, Pete. You were, but this was different.
Hmm.
And really, that's how I did it. That's how I made up with everybody. I'd already been forgiven for everything I had done. I didn't need forgiveness anymore because I'd already been forgiven.
Hmm.
But what I could do is going forward, as best as I'm able to. I'm still a guy. I'm still a human being. I still make mistakes. I still say stupid things. I still do stupid things. Um, but to live as best I can with as much compassion as I can, and provide the whole purpose of my life since then has been trying to help my parents cope with the loss of my sister and
Hmm.
the family dynamics that arose from that. And that's been it's I think overall we've been successful. My folks are both very elderly now, and their time on earth is not very long, years maybe or less, we don't know. But they've done a lot of emotional healing, and there's I can't say that they are looking forward to it because they don't have the perspective I have. Um, they're more at peace than they've ever been with their lives, of the way things turned out.
All right.
So,
Well, thanks for answering that. Let's get to this question. So Leslie asks, Reverend Peter, how you see our world in the future with technology and business growth. Is it possible to more simple, loving, humble human existence with compassion and love? How we are going to make a change in the present matrix government biz control?
well, I I can't tell you what's going to happen in the future with government and business control, but I can say that the more of us that fill our hearts with light and love, the more likely we are to treat each other humanely and with love. And so my goal isn't to create a new world order. My goal is to help people find a new heart order individually. And uh, but I also think there's a wild card out there that I want to toss in here, which might come as a surprise, Sean, and Leslie. Is I don't know if you've been following what's going on in the Pentagon in the past like 2 years and UFOs, and the data that's coming out in the next month that they're releasing. Um, we're not alone, and we haven't been alone for a long time. And when humanity has lived under the illusion, the false truth that we are different tribes, and all our tribes have stories. You get your Muslim end of the world story, you get your Christian end of the world story, you get your Buddhist end of the world story, you get your Hindu end of the world story. You've got warring religions against each other for thousands of years, based in the stories we tell ourselves about who we are. And who are we? We are one humanity.
Mm-hmm.
And when we find out that we are one little planet in a galaxy of other sentient beings, it's going to do a lot of shattering to our self-image, and it's going to ruin our creation stories. It's going to ruin our end time stories. And when all those stories get shattered, what's going to be left? Well, maybe what's going to be left is the truth of love, and it doesn't really need another story. Maybe what all it really needs is a bunch of people having their own individual stories of they're like, science has been creating, psychonauts and psychedelics and astronauts in space. Well, science has been making near-deathonauts, sending us off into the great void, and we're coming back with messages from the other side. And the message isn't about government or love. Pardon me, the government or business. The message is about the human heart and the relationship to each other. And nothing is going to heal in humanity, because we've been the same for 100,000 years. Until this thing changes, until our egoic minds cease to rule the day, what chance do we have? So that's where I'm at with all of that. I don't know if that answers your question, Leslie. And I wanted to expand your thoughts, Sean. Go ahead, Sean. I'll be quiet.
Oh, yeah, no. It says, I love your spiritual practice and vision for humanity. We may want the same. I don't know, or I don't see how, as human beings, we all can think like you are doing, where most of us are trying our best to enjoy who and what we love every day.
It's a really good point. It's a really good point. I don't think you need to be like us. I think that love is baked into human DNA. And nobody needs to spend their life in meditation or in yoga, or they don't need to spend their life doing anything. Just love the ones you're with, love the people you're around, allow yourself to be loved. But I think that the shattering of the stories that we tell ourselves will have social implications. I think that society itself will change as a result. But every single person, let me explain it this way. Every single person has stories that they tell themselves about who they are. It's the stories that run in our heads. I'm a white guy. I went to this school. I do this for a living. I have that for supper. I eat this for breakfast. All these stories we tell ourselves about that define our lives. Well, in a collective, in a society, we're a group of those individual minds all telling ourselves similar stories, and some of our stories overlap. The Judeo-Christian story, the Muslim story, the story of Genesis, whatever your story is. They're societal stories, and those are the stories that are going to get cracked open. And when those stories get cracked open, there's going to need to be something to rush in to fill that void. And I'd like that to be love. I think Jesus was right. Love thy neighbor as thyself. Love God above all things. That is the summation of the law. That is the summation of everything. And you don't need to be a Christian to believe that. All you need to do is love your kids. All you need to do is love your neighbor. Care for the person that you don't know, the stranger. It doesn't take any sort of... Some of the best Christians I know are atheists, because they live love without belief getting in the way.
Yeah, I really think that, we are on a trajectory of change. And a lot of that comes from, a lot of people are waking up to the fact that, as you pull away from mainstream media and stop listening to this narrative that we are different, and that, all the things that divide us and all the tactics that are being used to divide us, because if we're divided, then they win.
They win.
Right? And, the more that we allow them to do that, and whoever you want to call them is, and I think that these are the folks that know our history and know, where we came from and what we are, because we don't, because we've been told one thing, but reality shows us completely different things, from the fact that we have telepathy, from the fact that, when I think about somebody, is it a coincidence that they call me 2 days later?
Yeah,
Is
right.
it, you know what I mean? That we have these abilities that have been sort of suppressed. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that, it's the EMF that's all around us that keeps us from being able to use the abilities to the fullest extent that we have them. Because I know that when I go above, I go into the mountains where I have none of that. There's no power lines. There's no anything up there. That clarity and the ability to communicate in that way gets a lot stronger. And, I really believe that, the key is disconnecting from mainstream media. Stop watching the news. Stop being traumatized by all of these things that are being flashed at you constantly. Wham, 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 wham.
Shut off your TV, shut off your
Yeah.
phone, stop reading the news.
Yeah. And, we are alike. We are so much alike that, from our biology to our functions to all of the different systems in our bodies, I mean, they're all the same.
Yep.
The only difference is environment and how we were raised, and and the traumas that we've dealt with through that. But that what I hear from you is that the universe is in all of us.
All of us.
And we are from all of the elements around us. We are everything. And as much as I didn't think I was going to be able to follow you through the euphemisms and everything else that you were talking about, I completely followed everything that you were saying. And I don't even know how. It's you know what I mean? It made sense, even though it didn't make sense.
That's because it's not about the storytelling. Is a well-told story. Storytellers rule the world. That's what the media people, they're telling stories. Movies, they tell stories. I'm a storyteller, but what's encased inside the story is what really carries it for me. It's I try to weave the light inside everything that I do. And I use this as an example. Cézanne, the famous painter Cézanne, painted the same mountain over and over again. That was his meditation. That's how he did that. He put this meditation into his paints, and he left a lot of white space on the canvases for emptiness. There was emptiness, a lot of emptiness in his paintings. And you can, a poet can, a musician, a lyricist, a painter, a carpenter, a baker, you can put the energy of your love into objects. And I know that sounds woo woo, but I found I did television for 15 years, and I was on camera almost every day, and telling sacred stories, and that I wrote, and I found that if I cleared myself out of the way, whatever story I told, if I encased it in light and love, it went through the lens, into the ears, into the heart, into the soul. And I heard from people, from my audience. We had, it was NBC stations, it's like the news station, and I had a special role, but I would hear from people that my 2-year-old stops when they hear your voice. Everybody in the house stops what they're doing, and we don't even have to hear what you're saying. We just want to hear your voice. And the reason for that is that the light itself, you can project it, you can give it away. And why am I telling you this? Because anybody can do it. Everybody does it. Every time you hold the hand of someone you love and you feel that thing, it's not just chemicals, it's your soul touching.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, and the way you see that, I mean, is you see that with your children. When the mother, when the mother of your child is breastfeeding, and skin contact makes contact, and all of a sudden they start lactating. Yep. I mean, we're this thing, man. We're
yes.
It's, and I don't know, man, I can't explain it, but I understand it. And it's only because I've seen certain things and experienced certain things that this doesn't sound crazy to me. Nothing that you said sounds crazy to me. So, I mean, Well, let's get to Leslie's thing here. He said, I hope and pray you, Peter, you are right about the new world order of love and compassion and unity. Thank you, Peter and Sean, bringing us together with this enlightened spiritual perspective based on love, compassion, unity, inspiring us to have positive outlook every day and strong spiritual belief and practice. Very inspiring. Thank you, Leslie. And Leslie and I had a long conversation yesterday. He reached out and asked if I was available to speak. I didn't know who he was, and we had a conversation just because just what I do. Sometimes I'll just talk to random people, and it's inspiring to be able to connect with folks. And I think when we come through where we don't know everything, because we don't know everything.
We don't know everything.
We don't know anything.
No. Our ignorance is much larger than our knowledge.
Exactly. And, when you can shed that ego, and that's really what stands in the way of everything, is you, who you are, and the stories that you tell yourself and the narrative that you laid in your head and that you believe, that's the only thing that holds you back.
Yep.
Once you can get past that and start seeing, the similarities instead of the differences, then you will truly be alive.
Yep. And you'll help others live too.
Yeah, exactly. And, that's kind of, once I started doing this podcast and got out of self, and, and sometimes I struggle, I'm not perfect,
Nobody is.
and, I struggle with that, and, but I always find my way back to it. And they're like, okay, all right, well, why are we doing this? Am I in the right space? Am I, aligned with what I'm trying to do, and not doing this for ego, and doing this for the betterment of everybody else, and trying to tell other people's stories. And, we really resonate. And this is where we connect as people in our suffering more than our winning.
Oh,
right?
yeah, for sure. We do.
That's how we connect. And that's why I think podcasts like mine and others that just tell stories of, struggle and strife and comeback stories and all of those things. That's why they're so popular, because people resonate with the losses more than they do the wins.
Sure. Everybody knows what it's like to hit themselves with a hammer.
No, that's a good way to put it. So yeah, we're at 1:12, and I really appreciate you coming on the show. And do you have any closing thoughts? I mean, the one thing, what was the one thing that made you come out about this? I know you said you'd like 20 years, you were afraid to talk about it. Why did you come out?
Well, at the end of my book, you can see what happened, but in brief, I was a minister of a swanky church in a resort coastal town along the coast of Maine, and there was a couple of large embezzlements going on in town, and one of them was in the church I was in, leading, and it lasted a long time. It was decades long, and it was two-tiered. And by the time we finally uncovered the truth, these enemies of mine that I mentioned, they were colluding with the criminal, who she's all's forgiven now, by the way. We're all's good. And but at the time it was bad. So when it was all over, they tried to ruin my career and destroy me and run me out of town and all sorts of stuff, just wreck me financially. Powerful people, this is a resort town. These are powerful people.
Mm-hmm.
And when it was all over, after we'd prosecuted and she'd gone to jail, and I had endured all of because they kept trying to control me. They kept trying to stop me from looking.
Mm.
And so when it was all over, on one Sunday morning, one of the deacons came up to me and said, Peter, we're so sorry for what we did to you, for all these years and how we treated you. You must have had a lot of faith to put up with us the way you did, because it was bad. I mean, we made statewide news, and we were also New England news, but we were like headline in the state. And so I decided that Sunday morning to toss out my sermon, because I had to finally tell them that I've been lying to them for the entire time I'd been their minister, because I was saying that I was a believer, and I am not a believer.
Mhm.
I know that I know heaven is real. It's like, I know that my glasses are physical. I don't have to believe in that. And to me, that's with the way the divine is. It's real and physical and actual and much larger than the universe and myself. And so I decided on that Sunday morning that they trusted me enough, after all we'd gone through, that they loved me enough that I could finally tell them the truth. That the reason why I was able to endure all the pain that they gave me and suffering as they tried to, run me out of town and ruin me, was because I died. And you can't hurt me. You hurt me, right? But you can't touch my soul. You can't kill the truth of me. And that's where my strength lies. And so that's why I came out in the first place. And I came out with this book because I was working in Manhattan for this TV show, and the network I was working with, they caught wind of it, and they're like, "You should do this. Write this book." And I'm like, "I don't know." And we'll produce your book trailer. So if you go and you find my book trailer, it was actually produced 2 years before the book was published, before I even wrote it. And that was the incentive for coming out that way. But that's why it all came out. People pressured me into it because the story might do some good. That's why I came out in a big public way.
Yeah, everybody's story has the potential of saving somebody's life.
Oh, totally true.
And you're doing a crime if you're not helping humanity if you're hiding yourself.
Yep.
One last question. It just came to me, and then we'll wrap this up.
Okay.
Do you believe the story of evolution?
No. Yes, of course I do.
that we evolved from monkeys.
I think that we evolved from protozoa. I think that the record, the historical record, is showing both in the paleontological digs that they're finding bones, but also more particularly in the DNA studies, that we are just a blip of a species that evolved on this planet. And do we have a future as a species? Well, maybe if we survive, maybe we'll evolve into something else, but we might not survive. Lots of species have not survived. But yeah, I think that we've evolved, partly because of the historical record. I mean, mostly because of that. And science is this great thing that if it's wrong, it says so. Unlike religion. If religion's wrong, they don't say so. Science, like, we got this wrong. There's new information. Oh, okay. Well, now they're talking about, I don't know if you've been following what's going on in Mars, but one of our astrobiology, maybe an asteroid hit Mars and knocked off some protozoa that traveled to Earth that sparked life here, or maybe vice versa. Interplanetary spreading of bacterial matter or life, that's not inconceivable. So, did that influence our human evolution? I have no idea, but I think we're going to find out. I think that we don't know everything yet, but we're watching evolution live time right now on Earth with COVID. This virus is evolving, and like all good entities, it evolves for its own benefit. So it's a damn good virus.
Yeah, I feel like we're hybrids. We're hybrids from an alien.
Well, we'll find that out. Maybe we are. I had a UFO experience when I was 18 years old. It lasted an hour. We chased this thing, and I saw it do incredible physics. I know we're not from here. I know that they've been coming here for a long time. In the same way that the Neanderthals were fooling around with the Homo sapiens, maybe the aliens were fooling around with the Denovosians. I don't know yet. But if there's DNA in us, that it'll show up. We'll figure this out. And I don't need to know all those answers myself.
Yeah, I don't either. I just think about things. Sometimes I think about things a little too much.
Well, if you're not thinking, that's trouble.
Yeah. All right. Well, Peter, I really appreciate it. And if you want to find Peter, you can go to his website. I have it right up here. It's peterpanagore.love. And he's also got a documentary that is free on Amazon. If you're on Amazon Prime in some areas, and if you can't get it there, which in my area, I couldn't get it there, I'm going to go and check it out on YouTube. Documentary Life to Afterlife, Death and Back to. So you can check those out as well. And all of the direct links are available, like I said, in the description, and they'll be available in the show notes as well when this publishes on the podcast platforms in about 5 weeks. So look forward to that if if you follow me that way. If not, then you can watch this back again. It's on 5 different platforms and locations from here. So anything more you want to say, Peter?
I'm available for spiritual conversation, counseling, coaching, reflecting for people mystical experiencers, those sorts of things. Panagore.love.
Yep, and you can find all that there. So appreciate it, and thanks for coming on the show. And everybody else, thanks for watching if you've been out there. And Leslie, thank you for participating. I definitely enjoy it when we have people, that are from the audience that ask questions and participate in the broadcast. So, all right. Well, check you out, Peter. Thank you again.
Peace and love, everybody. Thanks, Sean, for having me very, very much. You are a pleasure for a host.
All right. Well, thank you. That's great to hear. I'm happy that you think that. It's always good to get great feedback. So I appreciate it.
All right. Peace and love.
All right. See ya. Wow. That was pretty cool. I gotta say, I was enthralled, and he captivated me as well. I was like hanging on my seat, going, "Oh wow, what's next? What's next? What's next?" So yeah, great job, Peter. I enjoyed that story, and I understood you 100%. So now I'm going to go ahead and pay this last bill. We need to. This episode of podcast is sponsored by Get Past Your Shit by Kelly McCausey, and I'm not flipping everybody off. I'm just letting you see my finger, or not my finger, but the I'm just letting you see the name there. And this is 19 stories of imperfect people who prove that you can. So basically, comeback stories and stuff like that. So the next broadcast is going to be on the 17th of May, when I have 2 live streams for you, one at 4 p.m. Pacific time and one at 5 p.m. More on that as we get closer. I will schedule those the same way I did this, and you'll be able to check those out. But until next time, stay true to yourself. Oh, no, I did that wrong. Keep it 100. Stay true to yourself, because everything else is just noise. And I will catch you guys later.
You've been listening to the Nowhere to Go But Up podcast. Sean is a single dad, a union blue-collar guy, and he spent time in federal and state prison for drug trafficking and fraud. When he was released from prison in 2006, all he had was the clothes on his back, a bag of mail, and some paperwork. Since then, he's turned his life around and shares the struggles and successes on this podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show, and we hope you were moved. To connect to the show, book a guest spot. For merch, Patreon, PayPal, and social media links, go to linktr.ee/nowhere to go but up. On Instagram at Nowhere to Go But Up Now. On Twitter at But Up Now. On the YouTube channel at Nowhere to Go But Up Podcast. See you next time.